Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. Today's episode, we double down on a topic that's really important in the life of a junior officer, the life of a midshipman at the Academy, and that's the relationship between a junior officer and a chief out in the fleet, the senior enlisted community. And so in today's episode, I'm joined by Command Master Chief Anthony Amato, who, again, I built a relationship with him while he was the cob, or the chief of the boat, which is the senior most enlisted person on the USS John Warner. So I deployed with the John Warner, and I built an incredible relationship with him because I saw the dynamic between the chief's mess and the wardroom on board John Warner, and I was just amazed. I was shocked at how positive the dynamic was, and a major factor of that was his initiative in pushing constant communication and constant mentorship between the chief's mess and the junior officers on the boat. And so he's an incredible guy. I'm so excited for him to be the representative of a larger chief's community in their role in the development of your sons or daughters, or of you, right? As you go through and you develop and make your way up as an officer in the United States Navy. Check this episode out. If you have any questions, let me know. If you like this episode and you want to learn more about life at the Academy, life as a junior officer in the fleet, and everything that is incredible about the Service Academy education and life as a junior officer, then make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel or to the podcast as we continue to build this thing. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great day and enjoy the listen. The Academy Insider Podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. All right, hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. This one's super fun for me today. Again, we're here with Command Master Chief Anthony Amato. And for anyone, again, background here, when I was deploying, when I was a JO out in the fleet, he was the cob of the John Warner. And so we threw a bunch of terms out, even just right there that you might not be familiar with. We'll jump into it. But him and I have a relationship from our time in the Navy and out to sea. So I'm so excited for him to be here to talk about relationships between senior enlisted leaders, the chief's mess and JOs in the fleet. So Anthony, thanks so much for being out here. If you don't mind, just giving a quick introduction to the Academy Insider audience about who you are, where you're from, how you ended up in the Navy, kind of your career progression and where you're at and what you're doing right now.
Absolutely. Well, once again, thanks so much for having me on the show. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's got a really great direction to it, so it's cool to be a part of it. So a little bit of background on me. I've been in the Navy 23 years, originally from New York. I joined the Navy because I didn't trust myself to go to college. I think I was pretty self-aware. Unlike a lot of the phenomenal, young people that you're speaking to that have a clear vision, I didn't know how I was going to do in college, but my whole family was in the Navy, and I had this desire to serve and to join the Navy, and that ended making sure that I ended up on submarines. And so submarines was something I was always interested in. And so I joined the Navy back in 2001, was in boot camp for 9/11. So transitioned a lot in the Navy from when I joined to where we were when I came out of school.
Sure.
And then been on a bunch of different submarines. My last one was the USS John Warner. And on that boat was where I made Master Chief. It's where I put in my Command Master Chief package and then picked up CMC from there. And then from there, this is my second command now post-Cobb. Cobb is chief of the boat, so he's the senior enlisted guy on board the submarine. And so I spent some time up in Whidbey Island in Washington, and now I'm the Squadron 1 Command Master Chief in Hawaii, where I have 7 submarines that I'm responsible for out here.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So for everyone who's listening, again, I just want to put this in context so you understand, again, kind of the relationship dynamic that's here, right? So when I was a young lieutenant out in the fleet in a submarine, Anthony was the Command Master Chief. So he was the senior most enlisted person on board the submarine, part of the command triad, right? You have the commanding officer, you have the executive officer, and then you have the Command Master Chief. And so, or in the case of the submarine, a cob, and they could be a senior chief, but basically, again, the senior most enlisted person on the submarine. And so he's a part of this entire triad. He's a part of the leadership of the submarine from a strategic and operational level and even down at the tactical levels. And then to get selected to take over as the Squadron CMC or Command Master Chief. Again, like he's saying, now he's in charge of an entire squadron of chief's messes throughout the fleet, right? And so again, his ability to make impact and the scale at which he can influence the fleet just continues to grow, right? So he's making his way up into very senior enlisted ranks, and he's just the man. Well, like he was my go-to guy on the submarine. Like when I came on board, like there was an instant chemistry, and we're like, we're gonna be friends, and we're gonna be good professional colleagues, and this is gonna work.
Exactly.
So love every bit of it, and I appreciate you being here. And again, today's episode really is all about the dynamic between, the Chief's Mess and JOs, junior officers out in the fleet. And so with this is I kind of want to bring it back to your first tour as a chief. When you put on those khakis, you become a chief for the first time, and you have that first interaction with your first division officer. How was that? Do you mind kind of running me through that whole experience? And like, was it a positive or negative experience? What expectations did you have going into it, and how did you try to approach that relationship?
Yeah, so I think I've grown a lot in my expectations for division officers, and this story always makes me laugh because I don't think it was me in my best moment, right? Like, but I as I like to say, I want to lower the waterline, be a little bit vulnerable. My first interaction was I had a young division officer who told me he was taking over as the damage control assistant, and he was not meeting the mark in some of the uniform requirements that I thought was the right example for an officer in the United States Navy.
Sure.
And so we had like a little weird dynamic. And I was like, hey man, like I really need you to fix some of these things and like, get a sad haircut and be a little clean shaven and, make the uniform look better. But, and the point of all that is in my head, I'm supposed to be training that officer for the next position, right? Sure. So I want him to be ready to be an engineer. And if he's going to be in charge of a department of 50 people, I want him to look in the best light. And that requires sometimes some uncomfortable conversations.
Sure.
And so that was our first interaction. He's like, hey, I'm going to be your new division officer. And I was like, I feel you, but we got to fix a couple things first, man.
Adjust some things here.
Yeah. And so, I say that story, but he became, I think there was an initial, a little bit of anger and a little upset. Mm. But I think that he really grew to understand that it was my best interest. Like, I wanted what was best for him. Yep. And, we ended up having a great relationship. Every promotion, he always reaches out to me. Matter of fact, the last Army-Navy game, he sent me a jersey from the game. So, Sweet. Yeah. So, great relationship. But I think in this role, as you can build great friendships and great chemistry, it's also about, having frank conversation and dialogue and holding people accountable because it's my job. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the first interactions I think about. And as far as expectations, I've talked to you about this before, but I'm a big proponent of the 4 agreements, right? And that means be impeccable with your words, don't take things personal, don't make assumptions, and do your best every day. And I think as a young chief, I assumed that division officer had a division officer.
Sure.
And I think that is something that throughout the fleet, we should reassess because, as we'll get into later, like there's a lot of mentorship and training that needs to happen to make sure that we are equipping them with the ability to be able to do that at the best, to be able to lead it to the best of their ability. So,
yeah, no, 100%. And as that changes, you kind of went through, obviously that's the first experience with a young JO as your division officers. You continue to make your way up in new tours and, new JOs come and fill those roles.
Sure.
Was your approach ever different? Did it develop? Has it adapted or evolved at all? Or kind of what would you say? How would you treat a JO checking in today versus that first interaction that you had with your first divo?
Yeah, 100% different, right? Like, think about it. I've been a chief for 14 years now, right? So, I hope that it's progressed. I would say that I would do a better job to build the groundwork and set the expectations for what it is that we need from you. Like, hey, sir, what is, sir, ma'am, what is your role? What do you think your role is as the division officer? And like hear what their perspective is. And then, have that dynamic where it's like, all right, well, here are some things that I'm going to need from you. Here's some of my expectations for you. And then really take on that mentorship role. I think it's a key. It's just really important to understand where we fall in our job as chiefs to make sure that we're preparing these officers for the next role and the next job.
Yeah, no, 100%. And in this frank conversation that we're having right now,
Sure.
what do you believe the primary role and responsibility of a young Divo is? I know you kind of asked them what they
Yeah.
think it is, but what do you think it is, and kind of what are your expectations for that Divo checking in?
Yeah, so when a young Divo checks in, I think priority number one is learning how to do their job, right?
Mhm.
Like they have to be able to get qualified to support the watch bill and support the mission. So
Sure.
whatever that is, they need to figure out how to do that. So step one is understand what platform you're on, what qualifications you have to do, and get qualified. That's step one, and it's my job to help support you in that in any way that I can. And I
Mhm.
think once the qualifications come in, I think it really I need to start teaching them how to lead, what it looks like to lead, and how to address the team, and teach them the skills that I want them to have in a future pilot, engineer, navigator, whatever these department head roles that they're going to go into next. And so it really is like it's a relationship where I want them
Mhm.
to start with 80% on calls, and then as they get qualified they walk it back. All right, how do we run the division? How does the day-to-day happen? And then kind of like continue to give them more and more responsibility so that they feel comfortable and are well-rounded in all aspects of the job that they're doing. But
Yep.
if they can't do the job and they don't know how to do it, then it's kind of hard for them to move past the next stuff.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And as you moved into the COB role, right? So you're talking about, again, these are conversations you're having as the division chief talking to a division
Sure.
officer,
Yeah.
right? And this is a very personal dynamic for you, right? Because again, it's you as the individual and you control your own personality. You know how you act in that
Hmm.
relationship with the division officer. But when you make your way up and you become a department leading chief petty officer and you become the chief of the boat, how did you then take that approach? Because now you're in charge of the chief's mess and you're kind of responsible for how your entire group of chiefs interact with all of the division officers on board the submarine. So for you at that point in your career, then what was the approach? What were the conversations you were having with the chief's mess at large to kind of, again, ensure success or maximize the benefit and the dynamic of the relationships between the chief's mess and the wardroom?
Yeah, so first of all, it all starts with clear, concise expectations. Okay, so I have a firm belief that is, I mean, it's in our chief's creed. It's what we're responsible for as chief petty officers is to mentor junior officers. Okay,
Mhm.
if you look throughout the fleet, the captains, the admirals that get it, that are operating at the highest level possible, they all will reference the first chief that they had. They
Yep.
do. They talk about it all the time. They remember them by name. They talk about the impact that they had on their career. And
Hmm.
what the message that I try to give to all chiefs is when you don't put the time and energy into a junior officer and get him prepared or her prepared for the next job, you're going to have someone that doesn't understand the value of the chief's mess. And to the best boat and the best command you'll ever serve at is when there is a beautiful relationship between the chiefs and officers, where the
Hmm.
chiefs know their role, the officers know their role, they communicate well together, and they're able to get the mission done because they respect one another, they support one another, they mentor one another, and there's just this beautiful relationship. And
Yep.
I mean, to be honest, I think you were able to see that firsthand
On
with your
John
time
Warner,
on
man.
Warner.
Yep.
And so the conversation with the Chiefs is simple. It's our job to make these future officers, these young officers, future captains.
Yep.
And I want them to think about what it takes to have them be a future captain. And the other part of this is, what we were kind of talking about earlier was we need to treat junior officers like junior sailors. Okay? And so hear me out, all right? Because I don't want it to come across the wrong way. But here's the deal, right? Here's the deal. These officers that are coming into the Navy are 22 years old. They are phenomenal at what they did. They worked very hard to get there, but they're 22. They don't
Yep.
know a lot about the Navy, and so
Yep.
we can't just put all of this energy into young enlisted sailors and not match the energy on junior officers. We need
Yep.
to make sure that they understand how to Navy and how to hey, what's in a sea bag? What do I need to bring underway? What are the expectations for deployment?
Yep.
Where do you get your LES? Like, some of these things they do know, but some of it, I think it's my job to make sure that they're ready. And I want
Yes.
them to leave knowing that they have a bunch of chief petty officers that have their best interests in mind and are checking all those checks and balances and supporting them. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? I know you was looking at me a little crazy when I said it.
Hey, what I love about it is it has a shock factor, right? When you
Okay.
say like we need to treat young officers like junior sailors, but the reality is, and exactly like as you explained that, I'm wholeheartedly in agreement. And here's my thing, right? When you go to the Naval Academy, you, for lack of a better term, you're in a really controlled environment. You're in a
Sure.
controlled bubble, and again, you don't have a lot of autonomy. You're not living like real life, right? Like you walk down to your chow hall and you eat 3 meals every single day that's provided by the Naval Academy. You go up to your room, right? Like you're in class all day. Like you're not living, for lack of a better term, real life, right? So the
Sure.
moment you graduate and you're like you're saying, you're 22 years old and you're on a ship for the first time, you're 2 months on the submarine, you don't know what you don't know what you don't know,
Exactly.
right? And so to have someone like you're saying, you put it 14 years as a chief, when you have someone who's been in the Navy potentially as long as you've been alive, who can help walk you through the basics of just life as a sailor, right? As
Yep.
a life of someone in the United States Navy, it's critically important because
Yep.
if you're lost in that way, like how are you then supposed to help
Lead.
your junior sailor when the chief is on leave, right? Or
Sure.
the chief is, you know what I mean? And so again, that relationship between the chief and the JO, like the chief they need to treat him like a junior sailor at first and help him learn the basics, right?
Yep.
And like get through life as a person in the Navy because it's critically important, right? And you can be so lost otherwise.
Yeah,
And
and not
yeah,
only
go.
lost, on all those things, but also like, hey man, qualifications in the Navy is not something that you inherently just know, right? Hey, hey man, how do you qualify? Hey, walk
Yep.
me through like, not just the ins and outs of the day to day, but like how am I going to be successful in this role in this job? And so
Yep.
I just, to answer your question, that is the message that I give to the Chiefs is that it's our job to support these junior officers to make them future captains someday,
Mhm.
and that requires putting in the energy and the effort and making sure that we are covering on all bases and not limiting to, oh well, they're an officer so they figured it out. Like, don't make that
Sure.
assumption. Ask the questions and mentor, lead, and inspire.
Yeah. And as you've made this shift now from being, again, the Cobb to being a squadron CMC, where you get to see multiple different submarines operating and that have their own unique culture, that have their own unique way of doing things. Do you think we're doing that well across a small subsection of the fleet? Or do you think that's something that we need to generally improve on when it comes to the relationship dynamic of a JO and a chief?
I think it's personality driven. I think that we could always do better in that area. I think certain people, like, here's the deal: if you're super talented at what you do and you have a really good team, then you have the bandwidth to be able to do more. Like, I
Sure.
think back to my coffee with the Cobb sessions that I would
Coffee
do
with the
in the
Cobb.
wardroom, right? Like, it was like we
Yeah.
would just sit down with the you were in there, like we'd
I
sit
was
down
in
with
there
the
all the time. I
sit,
had coffee with the Cobb, man.
so we would sit down with the junior officers off going and just talk about, hey, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What can we improve? But I had a phenomenal team and I was established in where I was at and was able to have the bandwidth to do that. But I also prioritize those things. So I
Sure.
would tell you when you go into these new roles, my job now is to help align those cobs and make sure that they understand the importance of these conversations. Like,
Yep.
hey, what are you doing to build a relationship with your junior officers? Because being a junior officer is hard, right? It's
Yep.
hard. You don't want to let down your boss, so you can't really go to your department head if you're having it. You can go to him if you're having a problem or her,
Sure.
but if you're struggling, like, you don't. No one wants to go to their boss and say they're
Tell them they're
struggling,
doing
right?
it.
Right, and then
100%.
what are you going to do? Then go to the XO or the captain? Like, that's even further of a reach. So as a cob and a CMC, you can be that like middle guy to be
Sure.
like, hey, how's everything going? What do you need?
Mhm.
Oh, the department head's being a little rough on you. How's that working? And then, maybe I'm reframing something and putting it in a new perspective for him.
Yep.
So that way he or she, can better handle the situation. Or maybe I'm going to follow up with the department head and just being like, hey, is this really the best way to lead the junior officers? Like, could we do that better? And
Yep.
so, my mentorship doesn't just stop at the JO level, right? So I'm able to talk to the department heads as well and make sure that they're aligned with, what we're looking to do as far as training junior officers. And so I have a very interesting perspective and an ability to like kind of put my hands in everything and be involved. But to answer your question, I think that certain boats get it and certain
Mhm.
boats and the Cobs and the Chiefs are doing a good job of doing that. and other boats can improve. But I think these conversations and these dialogues is where the improvement comes from, because no one wakes up and wants to do a bad job. Everyone wants to do the best that they can, and sometimes they become overwhelmed and they lose focus on, where the priorities are. And for me, that's just one of the top priorities for the Navy moving forward to be successful, is that relationship and that mentorship.
Oh, 100%. And to take it again, kind of talking now directly to the Academy Insider audience who are, think of things in context of the Naval Academy. It's something I talk about a lot, right? Is each company is going to have its own different culture, and things are going to be different from unit to unit, right? And so when you get out to the fleet, everything that we're talking about, all these experiences, things might be different, right? The relationships, again, I deployed on 4 different submarines in that 3.5-year span. And I'll tell you what, the relationship between the Chief's Mess and the wardroom on the John Warner was significantly different than a lot of the other relationships on different boats throughout the fleet, right? And so you may not hear these stories and hear the same things that are going on, right? Because again, it is very personality driven. There are a lot of different aspects that go into this. But in general, I think this is why the conversation is really important, is when you have an example of excellence, right? When you have an example of something that's good, we just want to make sure that people know that this is what it can be like, right? This is what it should be like. This relationship that you have with your chief, it should be a really special, and I mean this genuinely, a really special relationship you have, right, with that person in the fleet, someone who takes you under their wing and helps you, right, and helps you discover life as a naval officer, right? And so, I think that's really important. And as you mentioned, 14 years as a chief, multiple, again, as a division chief, as a department chief, as a COB, and now as a squadron CMC, you've seen a lot of junior officers. You've seen a lot of these different relationships and dynamics over your time. What have you seen that have caused certain JOs to really excel while others have kind of struggled, right? And then from your perspective, I know this has been, the topic of the discussion, but how have you tried to mitigate some of those things proactively as, people check into submarines?
Yeah, I think the JOs that really excel are the ones that don't think they have it all figured out, that are open-minded, that are open to feedback, that are willing to take in information and be in receive mode. I also think, some of that is what's the culture at the organization, right?
Sure.
I would say certain cultures, no matter what JO shows up, they're going to figure it out how to support them because it's their job, right?
Sure.
And so I think the JOs that really get it have the right culture in which they prioritize taking care of them, making sure they get qualified, and have a vested interest in their success. And I think the ones that struggle are, the ones that don't ask for help, right? No one has all this figured out. You got to be willing to raise your hand and be like, hey, I don't get it. Hey, I need help. And I'm sure that same conversation happens at the academy, right? You can't suffer in silence. If you want help, if you want to get better, then you got to be able to reach out and have those conversations and say you need help. Yep. And the ones that are willing to ask for help, the ones that are willing to raise their hand and say, hey, man, this is hard. Listen, the Navy is hard. The academy is hard, right? We're taking the best and brightest and putting them in a situation that is significantly harder than anything anyone can experience for college. It's just tough. And you're going to then go into a submarine or a boat or a squadron, and it's going to be hard there too. So being able to have an open mind, ask for help, those are the ones that seem to excel and figure it out.
No, I couldn't agree more, right? I think it's so important. It's so fun. I've been watching Ted Lasso a lot, so I'm trying to find ways to weave stuff in. But again, there is such a power in being curious, right?
Sure.
And asking a lot of questions and having the humility to be all right, I don't have this figured out. I need, what am I missing, right? what questions should I be asking? What are the things that I need to be, discovering myself to or receiving to make it happen, right? And it's funny that you mentioned, again, you have to be willing to ask for help, because Sarah Riley, who was another JO on the John Warner, right, took over for Molly. She is now at the academy teaching, and that was her number one thing about midshipmen struggling academically too, is you need to know and have the ability to ask for help when you need help.
Sure.
Right? That is such a skill that you need, because it translates directly to being a submarine officer, or just 100%. A submarine, or just an officer in the fleet, right? You have to have the humility to realize and be self-aware enough to realize this is hard, and it's meant to be hard. It's a really hard job, right? Sure. And so you don't need to, like you mentioned earlier with that conversation with your department head, you don't want to admit you don't know something or you're struggling, but like you need to, right? Like when you hit that point, you need to be tactical and strategic about asking for help.
Yep.
Right, about asking for help. And like those are the people who really succeed, because again, when you give off that aura, like that energy, that vibe of like, hey, like, no, I'm craving assistance, right? I want your opinion. I want your help, right? It kind of opens that doorway for someone to be like, oh yeah, no, like I want to invest my time into this person because I know they're going to receive it, right? I know they're going to receive it. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah, I love it. And so, for the people online that are listening, the approach I say is simple. It's called humble and hungry, right? So you got to be humble. You got to be humble and make sure you're in a position where you're able to receive information and be hungry to want to learn, right? When you add those two things together, if you're a junior officer and you're humble and you're hungry, you're gonna get so much support. Like it's because people are gonna be like, oh man, like they genuinely want to get better. They have a desire to want to learn, and people are just gonna want to help you. So I don't know. It's my little easy thing to remember. Humble and hungry usually ends up to some success.
A ton of success. And dude, I love that thing. I don't know if you got it from this. That's a Patrick Lencioni book, The Ideal Team Player, right? It talks about in order to be a great team player, dude, you got to be humble and hungry, right? Exactly that. You got to be humble and hungry. And I think that thing is, again, if you do that, right? And we talk about, this is something that I talk a lot about, again, just via reading. And I love this definition, right? Because I think sometimes people assume, right? When we talk about the assumption side of the house, that like, assume being humble means like, oh, no, I'm not good at that, right? It's like this feign of like anti-ego, right?
Sure.
But it's like, no, you need to be confident in your abilities and you need to have a strong presence. But humility, right? This definition of humility being, again, it's not thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less, right? If you're less focused on your thing, but it's more like, all right, look at this person's experience. They have so much experience. I'm curious about learning about them. Or like, oh, this junior sailor's like struggling. I want to ask questions to them, because asking questions to them may actually help me also learn what's going on in their life, right? And what they're doing in their job that's going to help me in my qualifications, right? We're all qualifying in a very similar way, right? And so you have that aspect where it's not all about you, and you're hungry to learn, right? And you're motivated to like want to ask people their opinion and get their thing. Like you're saying, you're going to succeed, right? People are going to want to help you. People are going to want to help you. And so, dude, I love that. Humble and hungry, dude.
Yeah, man, I'm upset now. You know I'm a book guy like you, man. I don't know what book that is. You got to send me that offline, because I haven't read that. I've never even heard that before. I thought that was me. I thought I was being original.
Come on, guys. I'm sorry to do that to you. We'll still quote you. I don't know that he trademarked it. You might be good.
All right.
Yeah, now for anyone listening, there's this author, his name's Patrick Lencioni, one of my favorite. He writes leadership fables, right? So he kind of writes stories, fictional stories that really highlight a couple of important lessons. And one of them's titled The Ideal Team Player, like how do you become a great team player? And one of the main chapters is this idea of being humble and hungry, right? And so anyway, we'll get that offline to you. We'll get that offline to you. Okay. Now kind of transitioning again, we're talking about all these things that, hopefully will help set JOs to succeed in the fleet. Now, with this is that, again, being a submarine officer, being on a submarine is difficult. Being a submarine junior officer qualifying is really difficult. There are a lot of battles at times for, junior officers and just people in the submarine fleet with mental health and some of the other difficult things. And so I just kind of want to turn this to your opinion. Again, with the vast number of sailors and junior officers you've seen, what do you think are some of the most difficult challenges in the day-to-day life of a young submarine JO? What are some of the things that are difficult and people need to be prepared for before they show up to their first submarine? So again, they can ask for help when they need it.
All right. I think step one is having a decent level of emotional intelligence. Okay. Sure. So when we are not on a submarine, we know what we need to do to put us back in the green band, right? That self-regulation piece. I think self-regulation is key on the submarine, because you know what you need to do to get you in the green band at home. Is it go for a run? Is it go to the movie theater? Is it, I don't know, go to a baseball game? Whatever your thing is. But now you're on a submarine in a steel tube, and those things aren't available to you. You're either going to, A, have to find something new, right? Yep. B, find a super motivated JO who wants to work out, and then work out every day, right?
That's right. But that's what we did.
There you go. But you got to find something, right? And so, a lot of people, when I started my comm tour, thought I was a runner. They saw me on the treadmill a lot and thought that I liked to run. The problem was, I wanted to read books, but anytime I had a book open and I was awake, someone would be like, "Hey, Cobb, you got a second? Hey, Cobb, you got a second?" and so I shifted to Audible, and I would
Yep.
take that time on the treadmill to take in information and kind of recenter me. And
Sure.
so that was my ability to self-regulate. So what I would tell to junior officers is, hey, it can't all be work. You have to have a balance. The term I really like to use, I want people to stop thinking about work-life balance, because as soon as you say work-life balance, you're looking at a scale. You're visualizing like a scale like this. Think about it as work-life integration, right? It's not always going to be even. It just
Sure.
can't be when you're on the boat. But you can integrate, making sure that you have a decent amount of each to make sure that you're self-regulated. And so self-regulate is just super high for me. Because if you just try to do work and qualify every day and don't sleep, like, you're not going to become the best version of yourself. Like, you just can't be. So if you need to watch a movie to click your brain off, do it. If you need to read a book, like, keep reading. When I see JOs that are struggling, the first thing I'll ask them is like, hey, when was the last time you went for a run? You run all the time in port. I don't even know. All right, man. Like, well, why don't you go for a run, go take a shower, and then we can chat. Because you're going to have a different mindset as soon as you get done. And, we're not going to get in the science of working out, but everyone knows it, man. You're in a better headspace when you're working out and healthy. So if that's not your thing, is it reading books? Is it Sudoku? I don't care. Like, do something. Like, play a game of cribbage, learn how to play. I don't know. Like, you have to do something, right? Yeah. So I really value the self-regulation piece to keep you being the best version of yourself. Because when you're in a good mental headspace and you're feeling good physically and mentally, you're going to operate at a high level. Does that answer the question? I think you had a two-part question, but is that part of it?
No, that answered it 100%, right? Again, which is, I think, a big struggle, like you're saying, is people finding, for lack of a better term, that work-life balance, which I love the way you've reframed that as, like, finding a way to integrate those things just to stay healthy. Right? It just overall healthy. And it's funny because, like, when we were on John Warner together, like, people would be like, if anyone had a question like, where's the DSO, direct support officer? That was my name, right? Where's the DSO or where's Cobb? It was always like, oh, those two are working out, bro. We were always, we always found time every day. Every day we found time to take like 30 to 45 minutes and get a workout in, like, reset our mind, right? And again, for a lot of times, if you can find someone to hold you accountable to it or be there to be your partner in it as well, sometimes that stuff can work out in a really good way. So no, I think that's really important. Like you're saying, is just finding that integration, finding the thing that, like, grounds you and settles you and gets your mind off, the constant struggle of the work life, especially as a young qualifying JO. And so I think that's great. To the flip side, complete like 180 here now is, what do you see that, like, brings JOs the most amount of, like, joy and purpose and fulfillment in their life as a submariner? What are some of the incredible parts of submarining that you see that really, like, keep these young JOs going and moving forward and onward?
I think giving them the opportunity to lead. I'll tell you, a lot of what we do is a lot of energy put on tactics and how to fight the ship, and I don't want to undersell how important that is. But when you start teaching junior officers leadership, when you start getting them involved in conversations about how to lead people and what that looks like and how to get them ready to be a department head, an XO, a CO, when your commanding officer has a priority to teach those type of skill sets, I think that not everyone is motivated by the same things, right? But when the officers feel like they have a purpose and that their job to lead is what it is, and they see the value in, like, taking care of people and understanding, like, taking care of their sailors, like, you see, like, everything open, because they're like, oh, it's not all about qualifications, it's not all about watch standing, it's about taking care of these people, right? And so when they feel like, wow, we can be servant leaders, we have the ability to, like, affect change in a positive way and take care of the junior sailors. Because after a year or two, man, you're not a junior officer anymore. I mean, you are, but, like, you know what you're doing. And so when you have that now power and understanding on how to lead, and you are empowering them and giving them the ability to operate and to do things that they want to do, man, I mean, it is a beautiful thing.
Mm.
when junior officers feel empowered to lead and they have the ability to, just, hey, I need you to do this thing, and don't tell them how to do it and just let them operate. I think that's when you see the best of junior officers, man. And it's certainly my favorite to watch.
100%. For me, it's something I talk about a lot. When I talk to current midshipmen about this whole thing, it's one of the things that I genuinely miss about being an officer of the Navy, having gotten out. But
Yeah.
why I love doing this as well. There are not many things that you can do in this world, especially, in the United States, where the moment you graduate, the moment you show up at your first job, right, as a 22-year-old, you are going to have the ability to make a positive impact in people's lives.
Yep.
Right?
100%.
Like your role, your position as a baseline is going to give you the opportunity. You're going to have a division of like 10 to 15 sailors, and you're going to have the ability every single day to make a positive impact in people's lives.
Yep.
Right? And so, again, if you can take that, and like you're saying, there are personal things you're going to have to do. Like you're saying, you're going to have to qualify. You're going to have to learn the tactics and the way to operate a submarine and drive that thing and learn the weapon systems and understand the reactor and like go through the whole thing. Like, yes, those things will happen.
Yeah.
But like there's nothing more important and more special than the opportunity as a young man or woman, again, 22, 23 years old, to genuinely help people, right? And if you have a great relationship with your chief and you're being coached by your chief as well, right? Like your ability to make a direct impact in the lives of potentially an 18 or a 19 or a 20-year-old kid, or maybe even a 27-year-old or a 30-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Who's in the division, you're going to have the ability to make positive change and like genuinely help people and lead people, right? And I just think it's the coolest thing about the military, and it's one of the really unique aspects of being an officer, right? Being a junior officer, because again, you get thrust into that position and you can sink, right? Again, if you walk in and you think you know everything and like, again, the ability to make impacts on people's life is going to go down. But if you walk in and you're humble and hungry, you accept that coaching and you come in with that mindset of like, how can I help people? Again, you're going to have an ability to like make real positive impacts in human souls, right? In human lives, right? And I just like, I can't understate that enough. Like that is the light at the end of the tunnel. When you're a midshipman at the Naval Academy, or you're a midshipman in an ROTC program, right? Like your light at the end of the tunnel is the day you graduate and show up on that ship. There's going to be people who are looking to you, and you can make a positive impact in their life, right? So long as you do everything that my boy Anthony was talking. But yeah, I'm glad you touched on that, because I think that's like, again, it's a really special aspect of being an officer, being in the Navy, right? Being a chief, whatever the case is. Again, you just have, the scale and the authority to like really make impact, right? And really make change. And that comes with, responsibility and obligation associated with it too. But like, at the end of the day, it's a really special thing. And so, I want to turn it to you now, maybe just for a little bit of storytelling as we talk about some of this stuff. When we talk about your relationship, with junior officers, is there someone that comes like top to mind whenever we mention like JO, like someone who you think back and you're like, this person was an incredible officer, an incredible JO, and like, what did they do that like makes you feel that way about them even to this day?
Well, I mean, I think you knew both of them. I mean, shout out to Molly McNamara and Christina Lanier. I had the ability as a cop to integrate the first submarine in Virginia. And so my entire submarine career never worked with female officers in the Navy, in the submarine force, until that boat. And so my first experience of what a junior JO female was Molly and Christina. And I mean, that's a high bar. Like that's a high, yeah. Like they're phenomenal. They're phenomenal. I mean, I have a million stories from them, but I mean, I think one of the things is that they just had a desire. They were both of those things. They were humble and hungry. They knew how to ask the right questions. Two totally different personalities, but both the same drive, and they supported one another, which I loved. And they wanted to make the boat better. They took on programs on the boat. Molly with MWR and same thing with Christina. She took over MWR and Emblematics, and they wanted to make the boat better. They took on a lot of the conversations that me and the captain had with them, and it was just great. It was great to see them. I love that. I just saw, so Will just took over as the Commodore in San Diego.
Sweet.
And so I was able to make the change of command, and Miss Lanier still calls me Cobb, right? Like that's it, right? Like and I love it though. I
That's what
love
you
it
are.
because
Yeah.
like so and I love the ability I have in this role now to kind of walk in on both sides, right? To be able to have these because I will tell you, I don't think I understood how much mentorship and officer engagement I would have in this role, but I would say it's 50-50. It's a lot with on both ends, right? Like, hey, I'm about to go be an XO. What are some of the things that you're looking for? Hey, you know what I mean? And so it gives me the ability to kind of walk on both sides, which is awesome. So I'd say they set a pretty high bar, but I just loved their desire to make things better. You talk about reading. When I think about those two, I think about legacy and I think about leaving the uniform better than you found it. And they had a desire to leave John Warner better than they found it. And they looked for ways to make improvements throughout the boat and made impacts not just in their divisions, but like for the ship. And so that was an honor to serve with them and to be able to be their Cobb. And those are definitely two people that, I hope I, continue to stay in touch with. So
I love it. And as we start to wind down right here, I want to give you an opportunity to give your best, for lack of a better term, a recruiting pitch on, what you want to leave this audience with as people who are interested and kind of affiliated somehow with the Naval Academy about why young men and women should consider a service academy education, but then why specifically they should be excited about being a submarine officer and being a submariner.
Yeah. So here's the deal. I've always wanted to be an officer, man. I envy y'all, man. I love what you do. Now, I think I'm in the right line of work. I think that God's got a plan for everyone, and this is where I ended up. But I will tell you, like, what an opportunity to go to one of these academies and have nothing but phenomenal leaders around you to help guide you on a path to be successful. Mm-hmm. Where else can you get an education to this caliber, have it be paid for, and have everyone have a vested interest in your success? You go to some of these other schools, they don't care whether or not you do well or not. Like, they don't care. Is the money coming in? Like, where am I at? But here, when you're at these academies and you're in these situations, they all want you to be successful. How fortunate are you to be at a top level education, to be taught and educated, and then to have everyone that wants to see you succeed? Man, that's a beautiful thing. And then to be able to have that and then transition into a job where you're now surrounded by chief petty officers and department heads that want to see you do well so that you can take their job. Anywhere you go outside of the military, you're going to get a job. And if you try to take someone else's job, they're going to take it personal. But here, we want you to take our job so that we can do the next thing. And so just look at how amazing that is to be able to go into an environment where everywhere you go, you're supported and people want to help make you better and become a better version of yourself. I talk about this a lot in my world and my podcast and the things that I do, but just think about it this way. Rarely does becoming a leader make you a better person, but becoming a better person will make you a better leader. Always. And that is what a lot of people at the academy and in the Navy are trying to do for you. And so, man, what a blessing to be a part of that. Come join us. Come join the midshipmen. Let's go.
hey, the Naval Academy mission is about to be reaching out to you, dude.
Let's go. I'm ready.
I want to see you in Annapolis. I want to see you as the CMC of the academy, dude. How about that?
I would love to get back to the East Coast, man. I think I got a couple more admiral jobs I got to do before I'm in line for that. But that would certainly be one of the pinnacles if I ever had the opportunity to be so fortunate, man. That would be dope.
That'd be sweet.
Someone owes me a tour in general. I've never been to Annapolis, man. I got to get out there and someone's got to show me around.
When you're ready, just say the word. I'll meet you out there, man.
Okay, I love that.
I would love to show you around. Show you around.
Love it.
All right, last bit. Why submarining? Why should people want to be on a submarine?
All right, so I think for this, there's something about a small community of people that trust you and have their back. Yeah. Right? And I'm not knocking anyone else, but you asked me why submarines. You could spend an entire tour on an aircraft carrier and not know everyone there.
Yep.
Right? The submarine community is so small, and we everyone has a vested interest in what's best for you. They're supportive. Here's my submarine sales pitch. It's going to change the way you think about submarines. We are often distracted by everything around us. We have all these things and social media and phones and likes and shares and all this stuff. if I could tell you that you could go on a submarine for 3 to 6 months and be completely blocked off from all distractions,
Yeah.
you could reinvent yourself in 3 to 6 months. What are the things that you want to care about? You want to be great at your job. I'm going to remove all distractions and allow you to focus on being great. You want to get in better shape. You want to start reading more books. You want to, whatever the thing is, you can avoid all other distractions and have a group of people that genuinely have your back, that want to support you and make sure that you're the best version of yourself. And no one can do that like the submarine force.
Yeah.
Well, we're the best at what we do. We're apex predators under the sea, and we dominate the undersea domain. And so if you want to join the winning team, the team that gets it done, come join the submarine force.
Just get me going, dog.
Let's go.
Get me going. Hey, that's the best framing of a submarine thing I've ever heard.
Okay.
Yeah, months at a time, disconnected from the world, can't talk to family. No, rid of distractions. You are there to become the best version of yourself. I love it. Right? It just shows how a perspective change can really frame something in a certain way if you pour into it. Right?
Sure.
If you pour into it and you take advantage of the opportunity. So, man, that's good. Well, Anthony, my guy, genuinely, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Any parting words you want to leave with the audience? Where can they find you if they want to hear you talk more? Because the way you just motivated us over the past 45 minutes, yeah, how can people stay in touch and follow along with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So right above me, Leadership State of Mind. You can find me on Instagram, and I have a podcast also, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. Man, at Leadership State of Mind, like I said earlier, rarely does becoming a leader make you a better person, but becoming a better person will make you a better leader. And so we're just trying to reframe the way people think about leadership. Leadership doesn't have to be this stuffy thing, man. It's a beautiful opportunity to motivate, lead, and inspire every day. I'm privileged to be able to have that opportunity, and anything I can share with other people to help make them better versions of themselves, man, I'm all for it, man. So come check us out. Come check out the podcast. Come check us out on Instagram and let us know what you think.
You're the man. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time today. And for the Academy Insider audience, if you ever have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the listen today. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.